Hello, hello. So now it's time for another exciting keynote. I promise it will be the last keynote for today, okay? I promise. And to be honest, I don't really understand everything what he's doing. And I was told it's going to be visually stunning, and he's the co-founder of iheartblob, and he's an augmented reality mastermind. Yeah. Welcome on stage, Shaun McCallum. Welcome. Shaun, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I love that. Augmented reality mastermind. Okay, yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot for coming. I'm Shaun. I'm the co-founder of iheartblob. And I guess this presentation is going to be relatively short. I'm going to try and keep it quite tight. And let me know if you guys can hear me okay, you know, all of that. It's a continued exploration into the mixing of new technologies and kind of spatial thinking. So it's going to, take the timeline of iheartblob essentially over the last 6-7 years. I guess we should start by what I mean by liminal cities. I guess we could just make it really simple and say liminal is like the place in between. So it's potentially mixed reality cities that we're actually focusing on. So today our cities are already kind of physical repositories for virtual artifacts. So from very global phenomenons like Pokemon Go on the left-hand side, which is something actually that's quite hyper-local, meaning that things are directly tied to very specific locations in your neighborhood, to Apple Maps or Google Maps that are trying to map the entire world and help you navigate through them, to more highly specifies a single location with a singular experience directly tied to the real world. I guess it's good to say that mixed reality is not exactly a very new idea. We had some comments about it yesterday that we're kind of waiting on the tech. I guess I have my own opinions on that. But we're still at the beginning, I would say. And we're starting to learn essentially how can the real world become the canvas for virtual exploration. So in which way can we actually use the real world to do that? Hopefully my video plays here on the left-hand side, or right-hand side. Yeah. So at iheartblob, we've kind of spent the last 5 or 6 years exploring how digital ownership, authorship, augmented play, kind of creative agency might reshape the urban realm. So from kind of a spatial thinking point of view, from imagining cities and architecture which kind of reconfigure for a user's navigation, to kind of decentralized processes, to some of my more recent work, working on a mixed reality game that is highly specific to specific locations that essentially allows you to play golf. Yeah. But like I said, at iheartblob, we've been making things for a while, I would say. We started out as a team of 3 creating on a daily basis. The idea was to get the kind of the juices flowing on a daily basis, producing work, and actually starting to think about how are we making these things? Why are we making them? What are they for? Are they useful? It was a bit of a craze, I guess, in 2016 when we started. But soon you have 1 object to 10 to then having thousands of work that you've produced over a long period of time. A lot of it is daily, so it's things that are kind of very transient. They come and go very quickly. It's a kind of fleeting thought. But yeah, we produced a lot of work, I would say, over the last few years. And in the beginning, we were imagining full virtual worlds, essentially, that we can inhabit. We would have an island of kind of architectural objects and experiences in biomes in which you can kind of navigate and traverse. But I think what we found quite quickly was that was exciting, but we kind of thought it's more exciting to have these strange architectural objects and strange kind of devices or constructions come into our world instead. So we soon realized that augmented reality might actually be our tool of choice. And we started deploying architectural objects and kind of games and little experiences across the world that were all kind of geolocated. So on the left-hand side is a piece in Koreatown, I think, in Los Angeles. In the middle is in Istanbul, and on the right-hand side is Wien-Mitte, which is a frequent haunt, I think, for Angewandte students in Vienna. And we did kind of the similar approach to, let me try and get this to loop. Oops. Similar approach in our very early work, where we basically iterated over the same thing daily and constantly tried to produce new ways in which to think about how these architectural objects and these like digital kind of beings, I guess, live in our world. So how do they inhabit it? What ways can we kind of reshape the camera feed? What way can we reshape the physical environment? And these have been like kind of placed all over the world, I guess. Some are in LA, some in London, some in Glasgow, Hong Kong. Pretty much anywhere we've been in the last 5-6 years, we've been kind of leaving these digital objects behind. And a lot of this kind of research culminated in the release of our first book. It paired 300 of these original designs and ideas with kind of short form pieces of text. The idea was that we're essentially going to have some critical thought in a very like bite-sized amount of information. So it poses something quite controversial sometimes or confrontational, and then tries to resolve it in less than, I think, 150 words or something. We kind of built around this, the amount of characters of a tweet, essentially, at the very beginning. Let's see if this plays. But around this time, we start to think maybe physical objects shouldn't be completely stagnant. So we'd been doing a lot in AR, but hadn't really thought about tying them directly together. And I think this is probably quite an early iteration. We'd seen books, of course, before that had AR components, but for us it was the first kind of thinking of, okay, maybe physical objects should be more like kind of software. They should have a way in which you can update them. They should be able to kind of get new information. They can kind of grow as well, even though it's a static physical object. And we start to use that kind of mantra, that thinking, towards the spatial design that we were designing and thinking about as well. So I guess this kind of comes to this idea of like architecture as software and the image of the city. So I've gone back to the city a bit here, that the image of the city shouldn't be designed or controlled by like a singular hand, but instead we should use these kind of gaming tools and gaming engines and real-time technologies as a way to kind of empower people, especially through spatial design, which we think, yeah, these digital artifacts will kind of begin to occupy our real-world space, essentially. So it seems kind of obvious now, I guess, but at the time it wasn't super clear. But looking back, yeah, we kind of came to the startling conclusion that games, play, and architecture can create creative agency, meaning what I just said, that it can empower people, so in very, very simple ways. And then this started to kind of encourage, let me see if, don't mind the loading. This is intentional. No, we continued to kind of along this path as architecture, as software, as the kind of spatial realm as software as well, and starting to think about how somebody kind of experiences physical space and ways in which we can kind of change the digital realm for a user's perspective. And this is like very early thinking about like AR, how it transforms a physical object, how it transforms architecture. And you can see like it's relatively simple kind of translations from 2D to 3D, like with some with some shifting scales. But one of the nice things about this was it was directly controlled by the user. So as the user navigated around, they had a way to influence. So just providing them a very simple agency allows people to actually feel like they're involved in the process. So you actually shape the way that you see as well. Let's see if we can get through this. Oh, we're stuck. Yeah, so you're now an active participant or a player. And this essentially started to shape the next kind of phase of work that we were investigating. where we started to create kind of configurable, reconfigurable, playful architectural objects or installations. This one is in Toronto on the beach. It's a lot of, I think they're like 30-meter long noodles or something insane, filled with, what was it filled with? Hay and recycled lifeguard vests and things like that. So very interesting. But it came with an augmented reality component as well. So although the people were able to reconfigure and kind of play in this area physically, they were also able to leave kind of memories behind. We were calling it Noodle Feed, somewhat based on like a spatial version of like the Facebook news feed. And I guess you could see lots of children jumping on it. They kind of demolished it and really gave it a really hard time. People and their dogs and their kids, oh, this is me. Yeah, their dogs, yeah, they had a good time with it, but it didn't last as long as we'd hoped. But one thing that's really nice about it is that the digital component still lives on. So it still has this kind of memory, this like lineage that carries on, that people can kind of see what happened at this time. So I've been talking a lot about things that you need to be in a specific location in which to experience. But in early 2020, I think, we won this competition to build another pavilion, but we couldn't go see it. And at the time, basically no one else could either. So we decided it was more fun to kind of bring the pavilion to them. You can scan the QR code and it will allow you to just open a website and place the pavilion. Yeah. So here it is here actually in Toronto. Oh, let's see if I can get this to play. Yeah, in Toronto. Unfortunately, we never had the opportunity to go see it either, but we did add another kind of augmented reality component, which was more for people thinking about social media and like taking photos with it behind them and having a lot of fun, which was quite nice. But I guess along this journey we had like a lot of questions, so some of them I still don't know the answer to. Architecture is software. Is it a game? It can provide creative agency. It can be contributed to online. It's multiplayer. There's all these kind of things that we're thinking about and ways in which we can change the way that people think about space and the way that people connect with each other, I guess, is probably something quite important. So if it's a game and it provides creative agency, what is authorship? So if you're able to create something, who owns it in the end? And this kind of got us thinking about authorship quite heavily. So we were invited by the A+D Museum in LA to think about a future way of living. And this kind of, we were thinking so much about like authorship and the way that kind of maybe the internet is going to be fully immersive and there's going to be new forms of property and new forms of currency and people are going to collectively buy digital things, and which I still believe is potentially possible and it's going to be happening. So what we did is we designed this kind of city. It was sort of a game. It was sort of neither a game nor a city. It was loosely based on your iPhone home screen in a strange way where you would have clusters of locations in which to visit. But it got us thinking, potentially we could design things for people that want these things and it could transform the way in which we kind of have a conversation with people who are interested in our work. And of course, at the same time, there was lots of kind of NFT hype where people were buying JPEGs, and from our perspective, we really wanted to essentially build this city and have someone own it or have the community own it. That was really important for us. So we actually minted the whole WebGL game, which was a lot of fun. That means that someone could actually theoretically own it or create a kind of cluster and own it together. And with authorship, ownership, creative agency, all of these things in mind, it kind of got us to a point where we start to think of ways in which we can bring them all together. How could we actually design spaces? How can we build projects that are funded by the community, designed by the community, and actually like influenced directly by them? And it got us to this project here, Fungible, Non-Fungible. It's the first blockchain-funded pavilion in Tallinn, Estonia, that we built in 2022. But the process and how we did it is something that's quite important, I guess, for us. So I showed you a slide earlier on of the Bilbao Guggenheim, and this is the napkin sketch from Frank Gehry. And I just want to say, like, this project is trying to be the complete polar opposite, the antithesis of this idea that like a singular stroke of genius will create a building or create a space for everybody to collectively inhabit or experience. And this was like a very centralized approach. And instead, we wanted to kind of flip it on its head. And that's where we think games provide agency. And that's primarily why we're interested in them. It provides ways in which people can be creative and ways in which people who maybe don't know that they're creative can be as well. So let's see if this plays. Yeah. Oh wait, I'm going to flip it for a second. Yeah, so by combining agency with authorship and ownership, you've got a way to kind of contribute. There's a way to receive credit for the things that you've made and kind of understand your own contribution. And in our case, we were trying to build a model in which people contributed, understood what they were going to get in their city, and also essentially could own a piece of that puzzle as well. So we built this like really simple kind of Minecraft-esque builder. I guess you could call it a game. It was very, very simple. But it was about simplicity. So it was about trying to having as many people as possible onboarded, as many people as possible contributing to this process. So we've had children on iPads build PCs and mint it on the blockchain as early as like 5, 6 years old. And then we've had like our parents and adults in their 60s and so on mint it as well. The process was really, really simple. You set up a wallet, you design a piece, you add some color to it, and then you hit mint. And then that becomes a piece within the kind of architectural framework in which is documented on this blockchain. And then those become the building bricks of the architecture. So here's the process here, connecting a wallet. It's almost like Minecraft. You add a few pieces, you add some blocks, and what's happening in the back end is that it's recording how many pieces are used, how much each piece should cost, how much timber is calculated. And then at the end, you hit mint, and you get given a price. But the price obviously is to maintain that physical piece that's going to be built. So it includes labor, it includes materials, and everything in between. And for us, it's a way in which people can directly contribute, but also kind of changing the perspective of what connecting in a community actually is. And these are kind of some of the outcomes, some of the video, or some of the PCs that are available on object.com. We worked with Object to kind of build the smart contract. But what's nice is there's now a repository of all these 3D models and designs that people have made. And one of the really cool things, at least we think is very cool, is that each one comes with a set of attributes. So we're directly crediting the people that designed it. We're contributing like their name, their kind of, in this case, it's like a unique signature to them as the architect for the piece. So collectively, there's, I think, over 78 or something individual pieces that make up the entire pavilion. So there's 78 unique kind of signatures that are designing the project and bringing it to life. And here's just a small video of some of the process. Oh, it doesn't have sound. That's fine. Yeah, so again, how you're building it, relatively simple. Pick all your colors. Here's all the pieces that you can see. There's my dad actually minting a piece. And then we went on site and started figuring out how to build these things. What's crazy about it is we didn't develop a very solid process of how it goes from building bricks to physical structure. So it became a bit like Jenga or a massive puzzle in which we had hundreds of the, well, 78, I guess, not hundreds. We had 78 of these pieces that we had to figure out how they fit together, which became like a very interesting process. That's the only part in which we kind of manually and like with a little bit of structural knowledge put it all together and actually build the final thing. Oh, my internet's, oh, there we go. We had a lot of like really nice volunteers in Tallinn that came and graciously gave us their time to paint, and it's actually really, really helpful. Without them, I don't think we'd been able to do what we managed to do in such a short period of time. Let's see if we can get it on site now. Yeah, so then we had to figure out how these pieces go together in location. Itself is a massive puzzle, I guess. A lot of pieces were placed strategically, I would say, after the fact. But thankfully, everything seems to be stable. One nice thing that you just see very quickly there is me drilling a hole that kind of places this like white disc. And this white disc is an NFC, so it means that each piece is directly tracked. So you can go up and you tap your phone on it, and it'll take you to the location in which their piece is there. So you'll know who the architect is, who the designer is, how much it cost. You could even buy it from them if you so wished. So then potentially the people could earn a profit as well. And there was us having fun like kids on the top of it, as you do. And yeah, you can see these like little white discs that are essentially a way in which we can identify who designed what. And yeah, here it is in Tallinn. Finally made it. I guess I should try to say some parting words or some like thoughts of inspiration. I think games and kind of spatial thinking across mixed reality can change the way that we think about the world. It might sound a bit cliche, but I was thinking that we shouldn't stay idle, kind of waiting for the future to come. The tools are kind of readily available. They're there for you to kind of go and start crafting it. If you're someone that's more technical, maybe you can design tools in which you can empower others, and kind of games that maybe allow people to be more creative and more kind of thoughtful in the spaces that they inhabit. Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah. I also need to say, if you're interested in AR or gaming at all, Yannick and I will be running a little workshop tomorrow afternoon, so feel free to come by. And if anybody has any questions or comments, concerns, I'm happy to answer any of them.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It was really inspiring. And as I saw the blogs, I just thought about 3D printing. Did you think about building the objects in a smaller scale and giving the people who participated 3D?
Yeah, like I think that's something we did think about early on. We imagined that we could actually give them the physical object. It became a kind of point of contention, I guess, not in the team, but like in our thought process. Can we actually provide them the physical object at the end? Maybe the pavilion can be dismantled and somebody takes home a hunk of wood. I don't know why they would want it, but maybe they would. But we decided just to stick with the digital aspect of it and kind of keep that purity between the digital representation and the physical. But I think it's a great idea to like have that kind of memento, I guess, that you could get together and build it yourself and with 3D prints. Very cool.
Okay. One more question.
Thank you, Shaun. It was really interesting to see your projects, also how they become some sort of a physical reality in Tallinn. I have one question. You were referring to the Geri project as an antithesis to your approach based on authorship, I guess. Yeah. However, if you look at it formally, from a formal perspective, they both, the projects that you have as an output and his project, they kind of deal with context in a similar way. So my question would be, what other exciting ways of the definition of context for an architecture that you define as software, how would you define context or the possibilities that what context could be?
I guess that's a challenging question. I think one thing that's kind of nice is the parallel between what Gary did and what we did is what we got in the end wasn't the result of like my singular brain or our team as a singular kind of entity. We spoke about this quite heavily with the jury on the competition. Essentially, they were kind of very concerned that whatever we would design wouldn't be what they had asked for. That was obviously a concern. If you're commissioning a piece, they're like, oh yeah, what are we going to get? And we can't really say what they're going to get. I think that was the thing that was quite interesting for us, though, is allowing that or relinquishing that control, and we kind of got what we got. So all the pieces were quite small, and I don't know if that's like because of cost, because of people's like design ideas, or whatever like kind of communication reason, or maybe the tool that we helped design to produce it was the reasoning behind it. But if people had decided to start making long beams, essentially, the entire architecture would be completely reconfigured. And I think there's lots of ways that we can bring people into the conversation. This was only one very simple way. In a lot of cases, it's keeping the cost down so that if people are funding it, then it's not an excruciatingly painful thing to fund. But it also gives you something very tangible and simple to design with. And that's kind of, I guess, why we have this outcome that is like that. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yes.
oh yeah.
No, I mean, you offer very many new ways of defining context within these projects emerge, basically. So that was just my interest in other than classical architectural approach, looking at space. What other parameters or potentials are there in context?
Yeah, well, I guess, like if you think of the 3D printing idea, the types of outcomes that you could receive or the kind of directions conceptually or contextually could be defined by the materials in which you're building it. So like we built it out of Minecraft blocks essentially, made it very simple, but you could take 3D printing and like 3D print pieces of kind of concrete columns, or like you could allow people in that location or in that kind of vicinity to make those decisions about the design process. There's so many levels of control that you can provide to other people. And I think, yeah, we just tried to keep it as simple as possible, I guess. Ja.
Okay.
Wenn jetzt keine weitere Frage mehr ist, dann würde ich vorschlagen, dass wir einfach alle umziehen, dass wir hoch zur Bar gehen und mit einem Getränk in der Hand, vielleicht fällt euch dann noch die eine oder andere Frage ein. Das wäre auch gar nicht schlecht. Vielen Dank, Shaun. Thank you, Shaun.
Thank you very much.